My name is Naomi Caldwell. I'm 31. And I used to think stability was something you built once, like a door you finally lock at night and trust will still be locked in the morning. Turns out stability is something you defend, sometimes with a calm voice, sometimes with screenshots, sometimes with a phone hidden in your pocket because you can feel the air changing before the first punch is thrown. I'm using a throwaway because some of this is still working its way through the legal system, and my main account is too easy to trace. Even typing that makes my stomach twist, because none of this sounds real when it's in neat little sentences. What started as a normal engagement ended with 3 people in state prison, 2 on probation, my ex facing jail time, and his ex-girlfriend, who also happens to be a lawyer, possibly getting disbarred. I know, it sounds like a bad streaming thriller. But it happened. And sometimes I still catch myself staring at my own forearm like, did someone really stab me over a wedding I didn't even want anymore? So, background. Because you need to understand how we got here. I'm a manager at a sports bar. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Naomi, really? That's the job you're defending with court dates and evidence folders? But I love it. I started as a bartender right after college with a business degree I never really used, unless you count calculating liquor costs and reading people's moods like spreadsheets. I worked my way up, and now I run one of the most successful locations in our chain. We do great business, we have loyal regulars, and somehow my staff actually likes working there, which, if you've ever worked in hospitality, you know is basically a miracle. 4 years ago, I met Evan. He was 29, charming in this polished, effortless way. Like he'd never had to fight for attention in his life. He came in one night with a group of friends from high school, and they were impressive, on paper. 2 corporate lawyers, a finance executive who worked with hedge funds or something he explained like I was supposed to be grateful just hearing the words, a dermatologist who talked about skin the way people talk about luxury cars, and a marketing director at some big tech company. They were celebrating someone's birthday, ordered like they were daring the menu to say no, and spent $600 on drinks and appetizers like it was pocket change. Evan kept coming back after that, usually during my shifts. He liked that I could make him laugh. I liked that he looked at me like I was the only thing in the room that wasn't predictable. His friends, though, looking back, the red flags were waving like parade banners. They'd make these little comments, soft, smiling ones. Oh, it's so nice you're happy where you are. Or, have you ever thought about getting into corporate management? Like something with more growth? Or my personal favorite, said by Hunter, the hedge fund guy, while Evan was in the bathroom. You're really pretty, Naomi. Evan's always had a thing for projects. I laughed it off because when you're falling for someone, you treat disrespect like background noise. Things move fast, fast, fast. Evan was basically living at my place after 3 months. By the 1-year mark, we officially moved in together. I had a nice 2-bedroom apartment in one of those modern downtown buildings. Nothing insane, but it had a doorman and security cameras in the lobby and parking lot. That detail matters later, so much later. The apartment was in my name, because I had better credit, and I'd been in the building for years. Evan didn't mind. If anything, he acted like it was cute, like my little bar manager life was this quirky chapter he was allowing himself to enjoy. For a while, life was good. Evan was killing it in real estate. He made more than double what I did, which his friends never let me forget. They said it like jokes, but jokes are just truth-wearing costumes. My job was steady. I got promoted to general manager, then put in charge of training new managers at other locations. The kind of responsibility that sounds boring until you realize it means people trust you with outcomes. Our families got along. His parents were sweet, the kind of older couple who hugged you like you'd been theirs since birth. My parents loved how ambitious Evan seemed. Everybody was blending. Last December, I decided to propose. I planned this whole weekend trip to a mountain resort about 3 hours away. Private dinner overlooking the lake. Ring hidden. A little cheesy, sure, but Evan always talked about wanting a story he could tell people, something that sounded effortless and cinematic. So I gave him cinematic. He said yes, and for a week we floated. We started planning the wedding, aiming for October, before it got too cold, after the summer wedding rush, when everything is overpriced and booked out. Evan's parents offered to pay for most of it, which I was genuinely grateful for. They put down like $40,000 in deposits. Fancy venue, catering, flowers, all of it. And that's when things started getting weird. Evan's friend group suddenly had to be involved in every decision. Every single one. The color scheme had to be approved by all of them. The menu had to accommodate all their preferences. The seating chart had to make sure they were all at the best table, like the wedding was a corporate award ceremony and not a marriage. It was exhausting. And their comments about my job got worse. Are you sure you want the ceremony at 6 p.m.? Won't Naomi have to work? Or maybe you should do dress shopping on a Tuesday, since that's probably a slow night at a sports bar. Constant little digs. Evan never stood up for me. He'd laugh it off. Or worse, he'd agree, like he was joining their joke to prove he still belonged with them. I started noticing other changes too. He worked later and later, always had emergency showings at weird times. He changed his phone password, started keeping it face down, always close enough to snatch if it buzzed. Classic cheating behavior. But I trusted him. Or I was stupid. Probably both. At my bar, we have a regular customer, Samantha. Not her real name, obviously. She comes in every Wednesday for trivia night with her coworkers. She's the kind of customer you actually feel relieved to see walk in. Tips well, never causes problems, smiles like she means it. She works in HR or something. Mid-30s, calm, observant. That particular Wednesday, Samantha was acting wrong. She kept looking at her phone, then at me, then back down again, like she was waiting for the screen to give her permission. Between trivia rounds, she barely talked to her friends. Finally, during a break, she waved me over. "Naomi," she said softly, "can we talk privately?" I thought maybe there was an issue with another customer, or a complaint. We have a small office near the kitchen where I do paperwork. I took her there, and the second the door shut, her face crumpled like she'd been holding her breath for miles. "I wasn't sure if I should tell you this," she said, fidgeting with her phone case, "but I would want someone to tell me." My stomach dropped before she even finished. Samantha's sister, Jenny, works at a super fancy salon downtown, the kind where haircuts cost more than my rent did in college. That morning, Evan had come in for an appointment. Highlights, apparently. And during the 2-hour appointment, he was on the phone almost the entire time. Calling someone babe. Calling them baby. Laughing. Making weekend plans. And then, in a voice Jenny could hear clearly, because when you're doing someone's hair, you're basically living in their personal space, Evan said, "Yeah, my idiot fiancé thinks I'm at a conference." Samantha swallowed hard, like the words tasted poisonous. I just stood there, staring at the wall behind her head, trying to force my brain to reject reality. Part of me wanted to say maybe it was a guy friend. Maybe babe was a joke. Maybe... But Samantha wasn't done. She pulled out her phone and showed me an Instagram story Jenny had sent her. A fancy restaurant, somewhere about 2 towns over, with a name that looked like it belonged on a wine bottle. In the background of a champagne toast photo, clear as day, Evan, cuddled up with a woman in a sleek dress, his hand on her waist like it belonged there. The timestamp on the story was 9:47 p.m. At 9:52 p.m. that same night, Evan had sent me a selfie at home with a face mask, claiming he was having a chill guys' night. He had staged a fake photo. 5 minutes after being seen in public with her, my hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped Samantha's phone. I handed it back like it was hot. I thanked her, because what else do you say to someone who just detonated your life with the truth? She apologized like 20 times, kept saying she felt terrible. I comped her group's tab for the night. My owner is cool about stuff like that, and I walked back out into the bar like I hadn't just been punched in the lungs. I had 5 hours left in my shift, so I worked, smiling, pouring beers, calling orders, running on autopilot while my mind replayed that timestamp like a curse. When my shift finally ended, I didn't go home ready to scream. I went home ready to confirm. Because if there's one thing managing a bar teaches you, it's this. People lie best when they think you're too tired to fact-check them. And I wasn't tired anymore. I was awake in a way I'd never been before. That night, while Evan was supposedly staying at a friend's, yeah, right, I opened the shared iPad we use for Netflix. The one he forgot he was still logged into. And the second I saw the first message, my blood turned cold. Because Samantha didn't just hand me suspicion. And I was finally holding the other end. I want you to understand something before I tell you what I found on that iPad. I didn't go looking because I wanted to win a breakup. I went looking because my whole nervous system was screaming that if I confronted Evan with only a hunch, he would twist it, deny it, call me paranoid, and somehow I'd end up apologizing for bleeding. That's what manipulators do. They don't just lie. They make you feel guilty for noticing the lie. So when I sat on our couch that night with the living room lights off and the iPad glowing in my hands, I wasn't angry yet. I was surgical. The iPad still had Evan's iCloud signed in from a few months back, when he'd cracked his phone screen and claimed it was too risky to keep using until it got repaired. I remember him laughing about it. Guess you're stuck with me using your stuff, he'd said, kissing my forehead like he was grateful. Like he wasn't planting a landmine. I opened messages first, and I swear, my brain didn't even register words at first. It registered volume, thread after thread after thread. A name I hadn't heard in years, but I recognized immediately, because Evan used to mention her like a ghost he'd already exorcised. Kara. His ex-girlfriend. The "it was a long time ago" woman. The "we're not even in each other's orbit anymore" woman. I clicked, and the screen filled with months of intimacy that didn't belong to me. Not just "I miss you." Not just "thinking of you." This wasn't emotional cheating. This was a second relationship, running parallel to mine like train tracks that were never meant to cross, until the crash. They'd been meeting up in a fancy hotel near Kara's office. The messages went back to February. February. My throat tightened because that meant this wasn't some wedding stress mistake. This started long before the ring, long before the deposits, long before Evan's friends were sitting at my kitchen table acting like they were planning a corporate gala instead of a marriage. I kept scrolling. Graphic messages, photos, plans, inside jokes, the kind of language you only use with someone you feel safe with. And the more I read, the more I felt something shift in me, like grief was trying to rise, but rage kept stepping in front of it. Because the betrayal wasn't just the sex, it was the contempt. They talked about me like I wasn't a human being, like I was a prop in the story they were writing for their own convenience. Then I found the group chat. It had a stupid name. Something like The Wolves. I'm not kidding. The kind of name men pick when they want to feel powerful without actually having to do anything brave. 5 names. The lawyers. The hedge fund guy. The doctor. The marketing director. The successful on paper friends who used to smirk at my job like I was a cute charity project Evan adopted. They weren't just covering for him. They were coaching him. Make sure you keep your phone face down. Don't change your routine too suddenly. She'll notice. Book the hotel under Kara's name. Stop taking her to the same places. Bar manager girls recognize patterns. I froze on that one because I realized they weren't just mocking me. They were studying me, like I was an obstacle they needed to outsmart. And the jokes about my job, God, they were everywhere. At least Kara can afford a real restaurant, not just bar food. Imagine marrying someone whose busiest hour is wings and beer. She's lucky you're upgrading her life. Then, there it was, the message that made my hands go numb. One of the lawyers, Ryan, said, "Wait until after the wedding. Divorce payout will be better. She'll be locked in, and she'll look unstable if she freaks out." Another one replied, "Exactly. Let her play wife for a minute, then pull the rug." I stared at those words for so long the screen dimmed. I tapped it awake again. Because some part of me couldn't accept that 5 grown men with licenses, certifications, reputations, were calmly plotting to use marriage like a trap. And then I found the message from the night I proposed. I remembered that night so clearly. The lake air was cold enough to sting. The restaurant was quiet. I'd rehearsed my speech in the bathroom mirror because I was terrified my voice would shake. And Evan had smiled at me like I was his whole world. While I was waiting for our dinner reservation, while I was pacing and practicing and trying not to cry, he was texting Kara. "Don't worry, baby. This doesn't change anything. It's just business. You're the one I really love." Just business. My proposal. My ring. My future. A transaction. I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with my knees pulled to my chest, scrolling through months of lies until the sun rose and my eyes felt like sandpaper. I screenshotted everything, sent it to my email, backed it up to my Google Drive. Then I took pictures of the iPad screen with my phone, because paranoia is what you call it when you don't yet know you're right. By late afternoon, I had a folder so heavy it felt like it could sink the whole apartment. And still, I didn't cry. Not yet, because crying felt like giving them what they wanted. I wanted clarity first. That evening, Evan came home around 7 p.m., cheerful and light, swinging his keys like he didn't have a second life dripping off him. "Hey, babe," he said. "Long day. You hungry? We could do sushi. My treat." He leaned in to kiss my cheek like nothing had happened, like my world hadn't been set on fire. I let him talk. I let him ramble about 3 showings and a picky client and traffic was insane, and I watched his mouth move while my brain kept supplying subtitles. Lie, lie, lie. When he finally stopped and looked at me like he expected me to play my role, I stood up, walked to the coffee table, and picked up the iPad. I didn't yell. I didn't throw it. I didn't even shake. I just handed it to him, already open to the message thread with Kara. For about 2 seconds, he tried to perform confusion. "What am I supposed to be looking at?" Then his eyes caught the dates, and his whole face changed. You know that moment when someone drops their mask? It's not dramatic like the movies. It's worse. It's quiet. It's the instant you realize the person you loved was never standing there. He dropped the iPad onto the coffee table like it had burned him. Then he snapped into anger so fast it gave me whiplash. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he shouted. "You went through my private messages?" That was his first defense. Not denial. Not shame. Outrage. I stayed calm. Thank God for bar work, because after years of drunks yelling in your face, you learn how to keep your voice steady while your insides rattle. I picked up the iPad again and scrolled until I reached the message from the night I proposed. I held it out. "Read it," I said. Evan's eyes flicked over the words. For a split second, I saw panic. Then, like he'd rehearsed it, he switched tactics. He started crying. But it wasn't sorry crying. It was performance crying. The kind of crying that comes with glances to see if it's working. "Naomi, it didn't mean anything," he sobbed. "It was just a mistake. I was confused. Kara was my past, but you're my future." I tilted my head. "You called my proposal business." He flinched. Then he lunged for the next weapon, blame. "You're never home," he snapped, tears drying like a faucet shutting off. "You work nights. You're always tired. I was lonely. Kara understands me. We come from the same world." There it was. The truth finally, without perfume. His world, not mine. "And if you hadn't violated my privacy," he added, voice rising, "we could have been happy." That's when I felt my calm crack, just a hairline fracture. Not yelling, but something sharper. "You mean, if I hadn't caught you, you could have kept using me?" His eyes hardened, and suddenly he wasn't crying anymore. He was calculating. "What about the wedding deposits?" he demanded. "My parents already paid. $40,000, Naomi. Do you know how humiliating it would be to cancel? What will people think?" Not one word about love. Not one word about betrayal. Money. Appearance. Control. I took a breath. "The wedding is off." He stared like he didn't believe I was allowed to say that. "I'm giving you 30 days, I continued, because I'd spent the day researching tenant laws like my life depended on it. That's what the law requires. You've been living here long enough to have rights, even without being on the lease." His mouth opened like he was going to argue. Then he reached for his phone. I assumed he was calling his mother, or Kara, or anyone who could help him salvage the lie. Instead, he started typing fast, thumbs flying. And when he looked up, his eyes were wet again, but this time it wasn't tears. It was satisfaction. "You're going to regret this," he said quietly. My stomach tightened. "What did you do?" He didn't answer. He just kept typing, then smiled like he'd just pressed a button that made something irreversible happen. "You have no idea who you're messing with." I let out a short laugh, one of those disbelieving sounds that comes out when reality is too absurd to process. "Evan," I said, "this isn't a movie." He stood up, walking closer, voice low like he wanted it to feel like a threat. "They're on their way," he said. I stared at him. "Who?" He tilted his head, almost gentle. "My friends," he said. "You should wait. Hear their side." Something in the way he said it, something cold underneath the words, made the hair on the back of my neck rise. I went to the bedroom and packed a bag. Clothes for work, toiletries, phone charger. I was planning to stay at my buddy's place for the night. Give him space to cool down, start packing, whatever. Evan watched me, still holding his phone, still smirking. As I slung my bag over my shoulder and walked toward the door, he said softly, "They're already in the parking lot." I paused, and without letting him see my hands shake, I slid my phone into my pocket and started recording. Because suddenly I understood. This wasn't just cheating. This was war. The hallway felt too long. Every step toward the elevator echoed like it was announcing me to someone waiting below. I kept my face neutral, my breathing even, my phone recording silently in my jacket pocket, camera angled just enough that it might catch sound, maybe shadows, maybe proof. The elevator ride down was torture. I stared at the numbers lighting up one by one and thought, this is how people disappear in movies. Except this wasn't a movie, and I wasn't disappearing. I was walking straight into something Evan had clearly rehearsed. When the doors opened into the parking garage, I knew instantly. 2 cars had just pulled in, parked crooked like whoever drove them hadn't cared about lines or cameras or courtesy. 5 men were already stepping out. Hunter first, the finance exec. Tall, built, jaw clenched like he'd been chewing anger all the way over. Ryan and Dylan, the lawyers, one already holding his phone up, the other typing fast, grinning like this was entertainment. Dr. Marco and Aiden followed more slowly, shoulders tense, eyes darting around like they knew this was crossing a line they couldn't uncross. And above us, on the second-floor balcony, Evan, leaning on the railing, watching, Not panicked, not confused, not concerned. He looked expectant. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like gravity doubled. I adjusted my grip on my bag and changed direction toward my car. Hunter moved first. He stepped directly into my path, spreading his arms just enough to block me without touching me. "Where do you think you're going?" he snapped. I stopped, kept my voice calm. Calm was my armor. "I'm leaving," I said. "I've given Evan legal notice. I'm staying somewhere else tonight." Ryan circled to my left, phone already recording. "We're just here to make sure Evan gets his things safely," he announced loudly, projecting his voice like he was narrating for an audience that didn't exist. "No one wants any trouble." Dylan snorted under his breath, still texting. Hunter took another step closer. "You don't get to play victim now," he said. "We know what you're like, Naomi." My pulse thudded in my ears. "I've been calm this entire time," I said, lifting my hands slightly, palms out. "There are security cameras everywhere. I'm recording. Please move." That was the mistake. Ryan's head snapped up. "She just threatened to release private recordings," he said loudly, pivoting the narrative in real time. "Did you hear that?" "I did," Dylan said immediately, slipping his phone into his pocket and stepping behind me. My chest tightened. Hunter smiled. "Get her phone." Everything happened at once. Hunter lunged toward my jacket pocket. I twisted sideways to keep his hand away, and that was all the excuse they needed. Dylan grabbed me from behind, hard. Not clumsy, not panicked. Experienced. I stumbled, my bag hitting the concrete, and suddenly I was surrounded. I remember thinking, don't fight back, don't swing, don't give them footage they can edit. So I did the only thing I could. I curled in. Hunter kicked at my legs, yelling about how they weren't going to let me hurt Evan anymore. Ryan kept filming, shouting phrases like, "Stop resisting. Why are you being aggressive? We're just trying to de-escalate." De-escalate. While 3 grown men pinned me to the ground. Dr. Marco stood frozen a few feet away, hands half raised like he might intervene, but didn't. Aiden's face was pale, eyes wide, breathing fast. And then I heard footsteps pounding down the stairs. I knew before I looked. Evan burst into the garage, carrying the entire wooden knife block from our kitchen. Not one knife, the whole block. "This is what happens when you don't know your place," he screamed. I swear to God, time slowed. He started pulling knives out and shoving them into Hunter's hands, into Dylan's, into Ryan's. My brain screamed, "This isn't real," while my body finally caught up with reality and flipped into survival mode. I managed to wrench one arm free, just enough to dig my fingers into my pocket. My phone vibrated as I mashed the power button 5 times. Emergency SOS. 911 dialing automatically. I screamed. "The police are coming!" I screamed it as loud as I could, hoping someone, anyone, could hear. Ryan laughed. "No one's going to believe you," he said into his phone. Hunter raised the knife. I jerked away just in time, but the blade still caught my arm. White-hot pain exploded through me. Blood soaked my sleeve instantly. I screamed again, this time not on purpose. That changed things. Blood always does. Dr. Marco swore and stumbled backward. Aiden backed away completely, shaking his head. "This is insane," he muttered. "This is insane." But Hunter didn't stop. He swung again. Dylan yelled, "Hold her still!" I felt hands gripping my shoulders, my legs, the concrete biting into my back. Somehow, adrenaline, luck, terror, I twisted enough to get my phone fully out. I didn't even look at the screen. I just held it up and screamed again that the police were on their way. Sirens cut through the night like a blade. Everything fractured. Hunter tried to run. Dylan let go of me and bolted. Ryan kept filming until a voice roared, "Drop the weapon!" The parking lot flooded with red and blue. Guns drawn. Commands overlapping. Someone kicked the knife away from Hunter's hand. Another officer tackled Ryan when he refused to put his phone down. Evan stood frozen, still clutching the empty knife block, screaming, "She attacked us! She attacked us!" I was on my knees, blood dripping onto the concrete, shaking so badly I couldn't stand. The officers didn't hesitate. They cuffed them. All of them. I remember a neighbor's voice shouting from a balcony above, "I called 911. I saw everything." I remember an officer kneeling in front of me, his voice suddenly soft. "Ma'am, stay with me. You're safe now." Safe. I laughed, then cried, then blacked out. The next thing I remember clearly was the inside of an ambulance. Bright lights. Someone pressing gauze to my arm. Another voice saying, "Possible concussion. Suspected broken ribs." And through the haze of pain and shock, one thought kept repeating. This wasn't a fight. This was planned. And whatever they thought they were doing to me, they had just done to themselves. I woke up in the hospital with my arm wrapped like a bad gift and a pressure band squeezing my ribs every time I breathed. Breathing hurt. Laughing was impossible. Coughing felt like being punched from the inside. The nurse told me I was lucky. 12 stitches in my arm, 2 cracked ribs, a concussion, a mess of bruises blooming across my legs and shoulders like I'd lost a fight with gravity. Lucky. I nodded, because what else do you do when lucky means you weren't stabbed somewhere fatal by men who showed up to your home with knives and a script? A few hours later, time had stopped making sense by then, a woman introduced herself as a victim advocate from the district attorney's office. She sat beside my bed with a folder already thick enough to worry me. "I've been doing this a long time," she said carefully, "and I want you to know, this is one of the most clear-cut cases of premeditated assault I've ever seen." At the time, I didn't fully understand what she meant. I thought she was just talking about the knives. I didn't yet know about the phones, or the live stream, or the catastrophic stupidity of men who thought intelligence was something you could fake if your resume was shiny enough. While I was being stitched up and scanned, Evan and his friends were at the police station, arguing. Not about bail, not about charges, about their phones. One officer told me later that Ryan, the lawyer, kept insisting he needed his phone for work because clients depended on him. Another officer said Hunter demanded to know when he could retrieve his jacket, the jacket that still had my blood on it. That alone was enough to get search warrants moving fast. When the warrants came through, everything unraveled. Not slowly, all at once. My phone recording captured the audio, the insults, the threats, Evan handing out knives like party favors. The building's security cameras showed them arriving together, spreading out strategically, blocking exits. Ryan's livestream, still archived, showed angles they thought were flattering until blood hit the frame and panic replaced performance. But the real disaster for them? The group chat. The detectives called it a gold mine. I called it proof that I hadn't imagined a single thing. The chat logs laid it all out. Not just the night of the attack. Months. They had planned this like a project. Step 1. Evan provokes me into an argument after I discover the cheating. Step 2. Friends arrive to help him leave safely. Step 3. Record me being abusive. Step 4. Escalate until I attack in self-defense. Step 5. File domestic violence charges. Step 6. Get me arrested, evicted from my own apartment. Step 7. Evan moves in with Kara while I'm dealing with charges. Step 8. Wedding date passes. Step 9. Evan files for divorce citing emotional distress. Uses edited footage for leverage. They even debated camera angles. Who would stand where? Who would talk? Who would intervene last to look heroic? One message from Dylan made me physically sick. "She's a bar manager. People will believe she's volatile. We just need a little push." A little push. That's what they called trying to ruin my life. Then Evan crossed another line because apparently he couldn't stop himself. 2 days after the attack, while I was still in the hospital, he showed up at my bar. My bar. He started telling my staff and customers that I was abusive, that I attacked his friends, that people needed to know the truth. My assistant manager, bless him, hit record immediately. Security cameras caught everything. The police were called. Evan was arrested for violating the emergency restraining order. He did it 3 more times over the next week, each time with a different witness, each time on camera, each time digging his own grave deeper. Kara got involved next, because of course she did. She started sending emails, threatening ones, to me, to the officers handling the case, to the DA's office. "You don't know who you're dealing with. I have connections. This goes away if you drop the charges." She sent them from her law firm email, a licensed attorney, threatening a victim and law enforcement. When the DA got those emails, the advocate told me they practically smiled. By the time the bail hearing came around, the defense attorneys showed up like it was a red carpet event. Perfect suits, confident smiles, speeches about stellar reputations, and community pillars. The judge looked bored. Then the prosecutor stood up, and everything changed. Video, audio, messages, search histories, medical records, knife fingerprints, DNA. The judge's face went from disinterested to furious in under a minute. Bail was set at $500,000 each for the main attackers. Passports surrendered. Ankle monitors. Flight risks. 2 of them apparently had international accounts and property. Funny how success starts looking like motive once the truth is visible. Dr. Marco and Aiden, who hadn't physically attacked me, got lower bail and lesser charges. But they weren't free. None of them were. And then, about 2 weeks later, the call came. Aiden wanted to talk. His lawyer had contacted the DA. He wanted a deal. Because there was something else. Another group chat. One the others didn't know about. And what was in that chat? Even worse. Voice messages from Evan. Practice sessions at Dr. Marco's home gym. Videos discussing how to sell the footage. Celebration clips from a wine bar the night I got engaged. Laughing, clinking glasses, planning how they'd set me up after the wedding. While I was texting our families the happy news, they were plotting how to destroy me. That's when it finally hit me. This wasn't about passion, or cheating, or even money. This was about contempt. They thought I was small. They thought I was replaceable. They thought I'd fold. And now one of them was cracking, which meant the story wasn't over yet. It was about to get much worse. Aiden didn't crack loudly. There was no dramatic confession, no tearful apology delivered straight to my face. He cracked the way people do when they realize the story they agreed to tell will eventually eat them alive. His lawyer called the DA's office first. Then the DA called my victim advocate. Then the advocate came to my apartment. My apartment again. The same one where blood had been scrubbed out of the concrete in the garage like nothing had ever happened, and sat across from me with a look that told me this wasn't going to make me feel better. "This is going to be hard to hear," she said. I laughed once, short and dry. "Everything's been hard to hear." She slid her laptop across the table. Aiden had handed over another group chat, not the one the others already knew about. A second one, private, smaller, meaner. This one didn't pretend. This one didn't perform. This was where they said the quiet parts without dressing them up as jokes or legal strategy. There were voice messages. Evan's voice, casual, confident, almost bored. "Okay, Naomi's predictable. She freezes when she's overwhelmed. That's when we move." Another one laughing. "If she swings first, we win. If she cries, we win. Either way, it's footage." There were videos too, filmed at Dr. Marco's home gym. Them practicing, literally practicing. Who would grab my arms? Who would block exits? Who would narrate? Who would intervene last to look reasonable? One clip showed Evan correcting Ryan. "No, don't say she's crazy. Say we're concerned." That plays better. I watched that clip 3 times. Not because I wanted to. Because my brain refused to accept that someone I loved had rehearsed my destruction like choreography. Then came the part that made me physically sick. A video from a wine bar, the night I got engaged. They were celebrating, laughing, clinking glasses, talking about how the ring just locked it in. Evan leaned into the camera, grinning. "She thinks she won," he said. "Just wait." I shut the laptop. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat there feeling something cold and solid settle into place. Resolve. Because at that point, this wasn't about surviving. This was about ending it properly. The harassment didn't stop while all this was happening. Evan, out on bail, ankle monitor and all, kept trying to tell his version of the story through anyone who would listen. Fake social media accounts popped up, posting edited clips of the parking lot video with captions like, "When an abuser finally gets exposed." Messages were sent to my staff asking if I'd ever lost my temper. Someone even showed up at my parents' house, told them I was dangerous, told them Evan had been afraid of me. My mother called me in tears. That one almost broke me, but my lawyer, the DA assigned one, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a voice like a warning bell, had been very clear. "Document everything," she told me. "Do not respond. Silence is discipline." So I did. Every fake account, every message, every appearance, every violation. I built a folder so large my computer lagged when I opened it. By the time trial approached, the prosecution didn't need me to prove anything. They just needed me to not fall apart. The trial started in November, 7 months after the attack. Walking into that courtroom felt like stepping into an alternate universe where my private pain had become public record. Evan sat at the defense table in a tailored suit, hair perfectly styled, looking calm. He didn't look at me. Not once. His friends sat behind him. Hunter stared straight ahead like he was daring the room to judge him. Ryan looked bored. Dylan smirked. Dr. Marco looked gray. Aiden wasn't there. He'd taken the deal. When it was my turn to testify, I stood, raised my hand, and swore to tell the truth. 2 full days. That's how long they kept me on the stand. They tried everything. They suggested I was controlling, that I was jealous, that I'd overreacted to cheating. One lawyer even implied that my job, working nights managing a bar, made me unstable. I didn't snap. I didn't cry. I answered calmly. Because bartending teaches you something law school doesn't. You don't win by shouting. You win by staying steady while the other person loses control. And then Aiden testified, and everything they'd built collapsed. He told the jury about the planning, the rehearsals, the motive, the money, the contempt. He described the practice sessions, the edited narratives, the expectation that I'd break. I watched the jurors' faces change one by one. That was the moment I knew. Not hoped. Knew. They were done. But the real implosion came when Evan took the stand. Because narcissists always think they're smarter than the room. He cried. He talked about fear. He talked about feeling trapped. And then, when the prosecutor showed him the messages, he got angry. And angry people forget to lie carefully. She deserved it, he snapped. She invaded my privacy. The courtroom went silent. And then he said the thing that ended everything. Well, Kara helped me write the report, so... The prosecutor didn't even hide her smile. Because Evan had just admitted, under oath, that his lawyer ex-girlfriend helped him fabricate a false police report. The jury was sent out. The judge rubbed his face. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt since before all of this started. Relief. Because whatever happened next, the truth was finally louder than their version. And they couldn't edit it anymore. The jury came back in 6 hours. 6. I remember staring at the clock above the courtroom doors, watching the minute hand crawl, thinking about how long it takes to ruin a life, compared to how long it takes to tell the truth. The courtroom felt heavier when they filed in. No chatter, no shifting in seats. Just the quiet weight of inevitability. The foreperson stood, and before they even finished reading the first count, I knew. Guilty. On attempted aggravated assault, on conspiracy, on obstruction, on false reporting. Count after count fell like dominoes. Hunter's jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. Ryan's face drained of color. Dylan stopped smirking. Dr. Marco stared straight down at the table like he could disappear into it. Evan sat frozen, not crying, not angry, just hollow, like the moment had finally arrived where he realized charm doesn't work on consequences. The sentencing hearing came weeks later. By then, the judge had read everything, not just the evidence, the intent. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He called it one of the most calculated and malicious cases he'd seen in over 30 years on the bench. He said their education and professional status didn't mitigate the crime. It aggravated it, because they knew exactly what they were doing. Hunter, the one who stabbed me, was sentenced to 36 months in state prison with no parole for 2 years, followed by 5 years of probation. Dylan got the same. Ryan, the live streaming lawyer, same sentence. Dr. Marco avoided prison but received 18 months probation, 300 hours of community service, and immediate suspension pending the permanent loss of his medical license. Aiden, because he cooperated and testified, received 12 months probation. Evan took a plea deal before his separate trial could begin. Conspiracy, harassment, multiple restraining order violations, jail time, mandatory counseling, and a permanent record he can never charm his way out of. Kara, the lawyer ex, wasn't spared either. Threatening a victim and law enforcement from a firm email tends to attract attention. She lost her license. Disbarred. The fallout was swift and merciless. Careers evaporated. Certifications revoked. Reputations shredded in professional circles that value silence over scandal. Their friends stopped answering calls. Their names became cautionary footnotes. And me? I went back to work. Not immediately. Healing took time. But eventually I stood behind my bar again. Same taps, same lights, same regulars. Different woman. People asked if I was scared, if I felt broken, if I regretted canceling the wedding. Here's the truth I don't say out loud very often. I'm grateful I found out before I said I do. Grateful the mask slipped before the paperwork became permanent. Grateful that when they tried to turn me into a story they could control, they underestimated one thing. I keep receipts. Stability isn't something you build once. It's something you defend. Sometimes with patience. Sometimes with evidence. Sometimes by standing still while people reveal exactly who they are. They thought they were wolves. They forgot wolves hunt in the dark. And I turned the lights on.